What are the cycles fathers pass down that sons are left to heal? What if being a man wasn't about holding it all together, but learning how to let go? This is a space where men speak truth and find the power to heal and transform. I'm Mike Della Rocha. Welcome to Sacred Lessons. Sometimes we're told we're too broken to heal, but that's a lie. Healing is our birthright. Welcome to Sacred Lessons. I'm Mike Della Rocha. Today we're joined by Isaac Zamora, program coordinator and associate marriage and family therapist at Freedom for Youth, a Santa Barbara-based nonprofit that empowers system-impacted youth during and after incarceration. Rooted in his Mexican heritage and reconnecting with his Chumash roots, Isaac is a living example of how culture, kinship, and redemption can break isolation, even when it seems impossible. Here we are. Whew. It's so good to see you, Isaac.
Nice to see you too, man.
I was really excited for this one because when we first met, and even now, I felt an immediate like connection with you. Because when I look into your eyes, I look into like all my cousins' eyes, and specifically, oh snap, specifically my cousin Isaac. Wow. My cousin Isaac, I'm a month older than him, and we grew up together. Mm-hmm. And man, that was a deep one. He's a special person in my life, similar background as you that we'll get into. And he was the closest to me growing up on my mom's side. And we had different opportunities each other. And I was blessed and privileged really to have, move away to a point where my parents worked multiple jobs for me to have access to an education that he didn't have. And I'm lighter skinned. So I got like this white privilege that he doesn't have. And I didn't have the upbringing that he had with the trauma. And so one, I love you, bro. Like,
thank you. Love you too.
Damn. Let me just start there. Who's Isaac Zamora? How did you get to this spot where you're literally creating space for young people to heal? In the 805, you live in the place of where I was born in Oxnard, but just tell the listeners how you came to be the incredible person you are right now.
Well, thank you for having me here. I appreciate this privilege and being here. It's an honor. So
received.
Yeah, and I grew up. Where I got to is like it's hard to explain without explaining my full story. So, I grew up in a household where it's very, very dysfunctional. Alcohol was always around, drugs, everything. And it wasn't just my family, it was lineage. That's all my family. Like, that's all we ever knew: alcohol, drugs, gangs, all that. So I grew up around all that. And my dad was a gang member. So he was, always in and out of jail. Always. And that's how I grew up. My dad was just, living that life. And so I was taking footsteps in his direction too, my family's direction. And I actually grew up in Utah for up until I was like 13. So I was out over there with a lot of my cousins. And so we're all just, doing our thing. We're all young, but we're living, going towards that life. And a lot of my uncles got deported too, because they're in and out of jail too, so they got deported. And so a lot of my cousins grew up without, a father figure too. And that's just like the story of my life, because my dad was around too, but he was never like fully around, and emotionally and physically too sometimes. But so I had all that in my life going on from an early age. And I slowly, started doing things that, that I thought my dad would be proud of me. And, that involved, getting suspended all the time, putting on certain outfits, talking a certain way, listening to certain music, doing certain things, that would put me on the radar for like, on for cops and stuff
Right.
like that. It's a certain lifestyle culture that I followed. So I um, was following that and uh, started getting suspended a lot at school. The last like 6 months of school that I was in Utah, I wasn't even there because I was suspended. So um, I was definitely on the verge, hanging out with other gang members, and my mom knew that, she was like, oh, if we don't do something, he's gonna end up exactly like his dad.
Mm.
So we moved from Utah back to the California area, specifically Carpinteria, and that's where my mom and dad met. So they moved away from there when they're like 21. They moved to Utah for some reason. I don't know why.
Mm.
They said it was cheap, but Bakersfield is cheap too. So I don't know why they
Right.
chose Utah, but they chose Utah. And yeah, so we went back to Carpinteria, and luckily by that time, I didn't know anybody there, so I didn't get involved in that activity anymore. But I was
Right.
still very I had all the things that were wrong with me, like mental health wise. Like I still had all the things that I carried from over there to over here. So I went on living my life a little bit. Started drinking like around like 13. Uh, took Started smoking when I was like 11 out in Utah. Then went over here, started drinking heavy, and
As a 13-year-old.
yeah, it was like 13, 14. It was around that age. And I know took a couple sips earlier, like, just a little sips, like,
Right.
But yeah, I started drinking around that age. And I remember my first drink I had, it was, uh, it was just a can of beer. And I tasted it and I was like, oh, this tastes like shit. Am I allowed to swear? My bad.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Be you.
Yeah, this tastes like shit. And then I took a couple more sips from it, and then I felt the effects of alcohol, and that's when I realized, I was like, oh, this makes everything, a lot more bearable. And by that time, I already had a suicidal mind. I had a mind where I was like, I'm the biggest piece of shit in the world.
Mm.
I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve anything. And because it's just a lot of things from society telling me this. It didn't come from me. That
Mm.
didn't come from me. That might have stemmed a little bit from my upbringing too, but that was something that society was ingrained in me. And I didn't learn about that till years later, till when I got through higher education. That's when I
Right.
started learning a lot more. But yeah, during that time, I was very suicidal, and it just quieted my mind, the alcohol. So years later, you know, abused it, uh, coped through it, and abused it, for 5 to 6 years, and or 7 to 6 years, and I got sober when I turned 20,
Mm.
and that's really when everything switched.
What was the why? Why did you decide to go sober?
So I was going in and out of jail, and I was doing everything that I grew up watching, and I was like, I don't want to do be anything like that person that I grew up watching. And um, so it smacked me in the face one day when I woke up blacked out in jail, and I was already on a felony trial. And my attorney told me when I was on that trial, whatever you do, just don't get arrested anymore. And I was like, okay, it's easy, can do that. He didn't say don't stop drinking. He just said don't get arrested anymore. So I was like, I can do that, but I'm a cop magnet. So I would everywhere I would go, just I would have some type of interaction with the cop. Whether I get arrested or not, it was always something.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I it was like about a month later from the last charge that I got, which was a felony, and or I was going to court for that. and woke up blacked out in jail. And I realized that, if I keep living this way, I'm gonna kill myself, or I'm gonna end up in prison for the rest of my life. Those two options are clear to me. Like those are the only two options I had left. Like that I could envision in my mind at that time. And that's when I got on my knees and prayed. I prayed to something. And I've done many prayers before, all the time, like help me, get me out of this. Why do I feel this way? Why am I being, going through all this torture, trauma, wounds, and all that. Um, but that during that time, something hit me. It was like an out of body experience, honestly. Like I was still drunk, I was still in a blackout, and I just remember like looking at myself, and at the cell, in the cell. I was in a cell by myself, and I remember looking at myself and being like, um, like from a third person point of view, and I saw myself praying and asking for help, and that was September 17th, 2016, and that was the last day I drank. And I got out of jail that day, and uh, went through a lot more other hardships, but it really flipped a switch for me. And then by then it wasn't just like a one thing, miracle white light experience.
Right.
It was I had to put in work. I had to change my whole life, and that included education. I was at the city college at the time already, but I was failing all my classes. So straight failed all my classes, and by the time was going back, I had to appeal for like the third or fourth time. So by that time, it's already you're appealing to the dean. The second time, they kind of slap on the wrist. Then the
Right.
third time, it's like, all right, what are you doing here? So I had to really put in effort to stay in school. And that's where I found my recovery community too. Moved into a sober living and lived there for about 6 months. And yeah, then I started my education journey there at the Santa Barbara City College,
Mhm.
and found my little family there too. So I found a family, community family, outside of school, which is my recovery community. And then I found my family in school, and that's pretty much like how I sustained my sobriety and my journey, and found my passion of just wanting to get back
Get
to my
back.
community.
Yeah. Let me ask, because man, your story is very, very inspirational. I hope you know that. Do you know that?
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at it, I'm like, oh shit, it's a crazy story, but I forget, so I'm privileged to be, I'm always privileged to talk about it and share about it, because,
Yeah,
it's just, it is a sacred story that I have,
it
and
is.
I'm just always honored to share it,
Well,
with anybody that'll
yeah,
listen.
let me ask you this though. So many of us, I'll use me. I spent my whole life wanting the validation of my father.
Mm,
And so many men, that's what we're yearning for. It's easy for me to go and get the nurturing from my mom.
mhm,
I'm a mama's boy and I call her all the time, but I want the same thing for my dad, but it's not acceptable for me to go to my father the way I go to my mom.
mhm.
And so can you share a little bit more about your relation with your dad? Because obviously you wanted him to be proud of you.
Yeah,
And so therefore you did things hoping that validation would come.
yeah.
What's that relationship like? How is it transformed?
So it's taken a lot of years to come to a place where we're okay. Me and him used to butt heads a lot. I'm exactly like him, and that's what pisses us off the most. And he knows my buttons because he installed them, and and I know his buttons because
You're him.
I reflect him, and so we used to bump heads a lot. We'd always fight, and uh, and yeah, so it wasn't a good relationship that we had, and there's moments in my life where I truly didn't give a shit if he lived or died. like truly. And but that was, back then. Now it's taken a better turn, and it's still a work in progress. There's still a lot to work on, but we've connected in small ways where I've been able to um, connect with him, like a father son relationship.
Right.
And those are those are moments that I cherish. I love that. And I haven't really seen my dad cry too many times, but I witnessed him crying a few weeks ago when my grandpa died. And it wasn't even like super like crazy, but I was able to be there with them, and hold them, and tell them I loved them. So that's how our relationship has built.
Was that the
Now,
first time you told your dad you loved him?
no, I've told him a few times, but it's very rare. So it's not like a normal thing. And my dad's also been sober for about like 4 or 5 years now too, 5 or 6 years. I forget because I wasn't really keeping track. But I know he's been sober for a few years now, and so because of that, we've been able to build a lot more of a closer relationship. But still work in progress for
Work in
sure.
progress.
And yeah, so that's something that I definitely want to work more on, and that's something that I connected with in your book too. When I was reading your book, I was like, I was I was thinking about my dad the whole time. I was like, I want my dad to read this book, and I shared it because I was like, we have a group chat. I shared that I'm gonna be on your podcast. He's like, oh, get the book. So he wants the
I
book, so
got
I'm
him.
gonna give him the book. He wants to read it, and so that's crazy. That's mind blowing to me. And my dad's ex gang member. He's was in and out of jail his whole life. Lived a hard life, and now he's like open to reading a book, about a father, your book. And I was like, that's crazy. It's mind blowing to me. So it's still definitely a work in progress, but it's going, it's going, and I have so much love for my dad. Always since I was a little kid, always looked up to him, always wanted to be him, and it's like a love and hate thing, when I was growing up with him, because he wasn't he did the best with what he did, what he knew, and for that I forgive him for everything, because I knew he was being the best dad he knew how to be, and for him growing up with the way he grew up, he's amazing. The person that he is, I think he's amazing. Um, but obviously, when you compare it to other standards, like you can't compare.
Yeah,
You
you
can't
can't
compare.
compare.
But yeah, he's I have so much love for him.
Let me ask you two questions. One, it's clear you love him so deeply. Why is it so hard to tell him more often I love you?
Uh, it's just I don't know. I was thinking about that. Like why is it so hard to like say those? Because you talk about that in
Yeah.
your book. Why is it so hard to say those three words? And it is. It's just there's so much barriers up with that. It's like literally breaking intergenerational like chains that we've told ourselves. It's been beaten in all of us. Don't be a bitch, don't be a
You're
pussy,
right.
don't do any of that, like this and that. And so it's hard. It's real hard to break those chains and step into that discomfort, because you say it, and then I've said it to my dad, and I don't think he says it back, because he doesn't know how
He
to
doesn't know
either.
how.
I think um to my knowledge, I can't fully remember when he said I love you, me. When he says mijo, that's his I love you, when he
Right.
calls me mijo. And when he says that, that hits me in the heart, and I'm like, oh damn, I'm his son. Like, I'm his son, and for that's like how he says I love you. He says I love you too by providing for the family, giving having a place to live in. So he shares I love you, or I love yous in different ways, but those
That's
that verbally saying it, that's a whole other
it's
different story.
yeah.
But it's still there. Um, but it is hard.
Yeah. You know, this conversation we've been having, I've been having other folks, and a lot of men I'm meeting, they tell their fathers that they love them when they start to decline in their health, when they start to get frail, and they're seeing the other side more. And then because of that, the father's more open. And just all the challenges that you have faced and overcame, is it harder to stay quiet with your emotions for your father, or is it easier to stay quiet?
That's a hard question. Like, so harder to stay quiet with my emotions, or easier to stay quiet?
Like, what's harder, saying I love you to your dad or not saying? Like, keeping that emotion trapped.
Not saying it.
Not saying
definitely
it
not saying it.
is harder.
Yeah, because I've said it before and like feels so freeing, so freeing.
Right.
I've given them hugs before and I feel so free. But when I hold that back, you know, that's those emotions stay in there. You know, then they get bottled up. They turn into something else. They turn into resentment. Like, oh, you know, my dad doesn't love me, and I'm a grown man now. I can tell him I love you, and you know, I could ask for that love now. When I was a kid, you know, I didn't know better, but now that I'm grown, you know, I can ask for that. So when I bottle that up, you know, something in my mind tells me that, you know, and just come up with different narratives, different stories that you know, like, oh, my dad doesn't love me either way. You know, why would I even say that? So I come up with different narratives. So it's definitely harder when I bottle it in, keep it in. And I always ask myself that too. Like, why do I have to wait till when death is close to start being vulnerable and emotional? Because that's how it was with my grandpa too. When I saw him, he definitely never said I love you. Definitely never hugged me. None of that. But he was, uh, you know, I loved him so much, and I didn't realize that until I saw him on his deathbed, and you know, that's when I held his hand, and you know, I held it, and you know, I just looked him in the eyes, and you know, I said I love you, Grandpa, but he couldn't talk already, so. But that was the only time I've ever said it in my whole life. I'm 28, and that was the only time I said it my whole life. And yeah, so that's definitely, you know, hard. It's a lot harder to keep it in.
It is.
Yeah.
Did your grandfather say anything to you through his eyes when you told him?
Yeah, he started crying. You know, he looked scared. He definitely wasn't ready to go, but so it looked so fragile.
Yeah.
And he had either dementia or Alzheimer's, I forget, but you know, he was already I don't know if he even recognized me, but he did look me in the eyes with, like, you know, like watery eyes, and was, you know, tearful, and that was enough for me to be like, you know, I know he loves me.
Yeah. And now, though, you're mentoring and really guiding so many young men that have had a similar experience as you. Given all that you are becoming and learning, do you all talk about issues like this, about emotional silence, or being more expressive, or telling your parents or loved ones your true emotions? Like, how do you even talk about this with the young men, or how do you approach this issue with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's so I'm a you know, a therapist, so like I work at their own pace.
Yeah.
And I don't reveal anything to them that they're not ready for. But I'll throw in, you know, things where I talk about my own personal experiences and they relate to them. And but yeah, we do talk about it. It's just we don't go super deep either, because they're like the kids that I work with, they're like 12 to like 15, 16, mostly 16, up to 17. Do work with a couple that are over 18, and those ones I do dive in a little bit more, or a lot more deeper.
Right.
But under, you know, 18, it's a lot more harder to get, you know, that deep into their emotions, because a lot of them aren't ready for that.
Right.
But I definitely plant the seed. And we do have top conversations about it. We just don't dive super deep into it. But some of them recently that I've been meeting in the hall, they've been I don't know. They've been in this more quiet space. Unfortunately, because they're locked up, but they have a lot more quiet time where they can be with themselves, and I get to dive in deeper with them, and not because I want to, but because they're open to it. They're
They will.
willing, and yeah, we're talking about some deep stuff. Emotions and the love that they have for their family, and their goals and everything. Uh, so yeah, we do definitely touch upon it, and it's uncomfortable for them too because they'll tell me. I mean, I'll be talking, I'll just kind of go out on a tangent like for a little bit, and I'm like, oh damn, I went too deep because I saw their face. They're like looking at me, and I'm like, oh my bad. Did I say too much? Did I go? You know, did we go too deep? And because I check in with them often, and I see their body language, their everything, and they're just like, no, I just never talked about this before. Never talked about this, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's a deep conversation, and we just as when I was your age, I definitely didn't talk about any of
Right.
this.
How
I
did they feel after?
um
Did they tell you?
yeah, I mean I go through their I always have this emotional wheel that I show them, and I tell them like, okay, how are you feeling? Because we don't know how to identify emotions.
Yeah.
I still have struggles doing that, but I show them that picture, that emotional wheel, then I tell them like, all right, how are you feeling? And they usually say the basic emotions because it's still pretty early on too. So, but I always check in with them. They say they feel grateful to have these conversations, and whether it sticks or not, that's not my job. It's
Right.
just planting the seed. But I'm definitely planting the seed, and I definitely go over it repeatedly, like more than one session. It's almost like every session. Throw in those topics in there. And then I always tell them like I know I repeat myself a lot, but it's because you need to hear this. And I always repeat too they are loved. They're not criminals. They're not pieces of shit. They're not threats to society. That they can be anything they want to be in this world. And tell them that every session. And I tell them like this is what my mom passed on to me. That's she always told me I could be anything I wanted to be in this world, and that's the gift that I got from my mom. And I'm like, I don't know if you've heard this from your family, anybody, any of your elders, anything like that, but this is my opportunity to pass my gifts on to you, and I'm always going to remind you. And I tell them that I'm like, if you don't believe it, then just know that I will believe it long enough for you until you believe it yourself. And they they're always super grateful. That's I don't need to do anything crazy with them when I'm doing therapy. All I need to do is be there with them, and
Presence.
remind them that they're gifts to this world.
Mm.
So that's a lot of what I do for my job, and like I said, we do dive deep into these other topics, but I focus on that. Letting them know that they are gifts to this world, and um, they belong here.
I want to model back and remind you that you're such an absolute gift to me and to the world, and the honor that you're teaching these young men emotional literacy, and you're providing them mantras to remember their greatness and their divinity. And if no one in the world ever said, I love you, you're telling these young men, I love you, and in normalizing and making it okay. Like, you don't have to react in such a violent or societally acceptable way. There's other ways to deal with our pain.
Yeah.
And the other thing I just want to name is that you're working with our family members that oftentimes society has already cast off, thrown away, because they don't see the gifts, they don't see the talent, they don't see themselves in those young people.
Yeah.
And you do.
Yeah.
And they feel that, and you're changing their lives. And you are right now in the exact moment in time, you're the age around when I was born. My dad was around that age. And therefore you're being that father figure to these young people, and you're sharing your asha and your wisdom with them. So I want to honor that, because that's the change in direction of our civilization, really, our society.
Yeah.
And there's, do you know Nane Alejandres, Barrios Unidos?
Um, Not good with names, but pretty sure I've seen his
So
face. Yeah.
so they're a group based in Santa Cruz, kind of like Freedom for Youth.
Yeah.
Uh, he's an elder. He's been mentoring me, but he works a lot in the prisons across California.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of tease this out because, different environments demand different ways that we show up, unfortunately, right? The way I show up in this is different than I would in a other location.
Yeah.
But in prison has its own politics and everything else. But Nane, I go in there and perform every holiday with him for the men. We've gone to San Quentin. We've gone to numerous prisons, but he taught me something. It's in prison, but it's actually in society that when he sees a man, he always makes sure where he'll turn him so that only your eyes are meeting mine and no one behind you could see. And he will literally say the same words you just said to that man. Society may think you're a criminal or you're a piece of shit, but I want you to know that you are loved, you are sacred, you are me. And he does that because then the man will cry. And some men are conditioned to be so hardened that he will say that and he will see a water but no tears.
Yeah.
And Nane will say, I see you and I'm going to take your tears and I will cry for you when I go outside. And it's like that mutuality that you're doing in real time that we don't talk enough in outside.
Yeah.
So then these stories like you're talking about continue to be perpetuated and shared and believed in, really.
Yeah.
And so is there a difference when you're working inside the lockup with young people compared to outside? Or is it the same dynamic? And
Yeah. I mean, no, it's definitely a whole other, different type of, context, circumstances, and so I definitely present in a different way. And, or not me necessarily, but they present in a different way. And, and I'm aware too that I can't dive, I definitely don't ever try to dive too deep in there with them because they have to go back out,
Right.
they have that hour with them when they're in the juvenile hall. So even outside though too, I can't dive super deep with them because I meet them at schools too. The only time that I really can, where I feel super comfortable, is if they're at our center, or like I'm driving them around in my car, and I can feel a lot more comfortable with opening up the space, and they can be a lot more emotional. But I've found when I'm out in public, at the schools, anything, or at the juvenile hall, it's definitely has to be a quick open close.
Right.
But it is different. It definitely is different, and so I have to be very mindful of how I do my work too. All of them are all different. Can't
Right.
put them all in like the same type of like, oh, this worked for one kid, it'll work for the other one. So I have to take a completely different approach for all because they're all at different stages, different s- just different circumstances in their life, and different developmental ages too. So it definitely it varies,
Right.
and it does but I do see changes, from inside and outside, from how I do my therapy. And what I've noticed though, definitely when they're locked up, it I can dive a little bit more deeper, which is a little crazy because a lot of the kids that I've seen, uh, there's a couple of them that are locked up right now, and I've known them for about like 2 3 years. One of them I've known for almost 4 years now, and the therapy that I'm doing with the one that I've known for 4 years, he was my first client, and he's me and him are connecting on a deeper level now that he's incarcerated. Um, and so that's crazy to me. I've known him for 4 years, but this last couple months that he's been locked up, um, we've been diving a lot more deeper, and he's just a lot more open, and to dive in deeper, and so that's it. Definitely, it definitely changes, from inside and outside.
Right. And let me ask you about this issue of like shame, but also forgiveness. You know, we all embody the wounds, but also the gifts of our fathers, right? And those that raised us. But for you to tell your father, I love you, there had to have been a step of forgiveness, if you will. Is that a correct? Did you have to forgive him to say I love you, or did you just, you know, because he, like you said, our fathers did the best they could with what they knew and the language they had.
Yeah.
And I had to forgive my father and accept that before I could fully dive in. But how was that with you?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had to forgive him too, because I had a lot of resentment, you know, a lot of resentment towards him. And when I got sober, I, you know, I had to look back at, you know, everything, the whole person, his, you know, who he was as a person. I had to look back at his, you know, his upbringing and, you know, his, you know, experience with, you know, having a father too, or, you know, having an absent father too. So definitely looking back at his story. And then that made me understand a lot more. It definitely wasn't, you know, like it being um, dismissing all the, you know, trauma, you know, that we kind of went through him with him, but I definitely led the path towards acceptance and forgiveness. And when I made my like amends to him, because that's part of my recovery program, you know, I made my amends, and I didn't do it in person. I just wrote it in a letter, and I was probably like about a year or two sober, super fresh in sobriety, and I was only 22, 21. And so I wrote the letter and gave it to him, and that was enough for me to release enough and to be like I like truly love him. And so it definitely took forgiveness. I had to understand where he was coming from, and I had to be willing to accept that too, because in my mind, you know, I mean, there's so many stories that I could make up, but that's gonna keep me in a place of hate, and that's not gonna do any good for me. You know, I'm gonna carry that into all my relationships, you know, all my relationships, and it's gonna creep into everything, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
You know, I don't want to do that. The relationship with my dad is such like a heavy, close bond. Like that's such an intimate relationship that if I don't work on that, my whole life is gonna be, you know, fucked up. My whole life, and I acknowledge that. So I had to do that for not only for him, but for myself. And so, you know, working through that was hard. Forgiving him was not an easy task, but through you know, praying was the biggest thing, and being open to it. Those were the biggest things, and having little glimpses of what our love could be. Because I definitely didn't know, you know, any type of you know, like fatherly love or anything like that. But I got that modeled to me through my recovery too. You know, other men telling me that I love you, giving me hugs. And the first time a man ever did that to me, I was so stiff. I was like, I'm in my head. I was like, I'm not gay. I was like, why are you doing this to me? And it was just so like ingrained into me that I was such a unnatural, you know, wrong thing to do. But you know, enough of those years go by, you know, where I, you know, got more comfortable with that, and that, you know, paved the way too to be a lot more loving and forgiving and open to my dad too. And yeah, like I said, it's still work in progress. We go up,
Right.
you know, up and down, but you know, you know, it's definitely getting better.
Did he ever read that note you wrote? Do you
Yeah,
know?
I'm pretty sure.
He never shared anything?
No, he didn't. Yeah, wanted to ask him about it too, but you know, there's still fear, and but
What's the fear of?
the fear is that I won't be the love that I'm hoping to get won't be reciprocated. That like fear of yeah, just not being loved back. It's a heavy fear, no heavy fear, deep fear in me. Not being loved back, not being good enough, you know, not being accepted, rejection, you know, all that. It's definitely still in me, and I have to, I have to check that. I have to acknowledge it. The more I resist, the more it persists. So like I have to be willing to acknowledge it. But yeah, I mean they still linger around. They're still in there. They're dressed up in different ways. My fears, but the bottom of it is still fear of not being loved back,
Right.
not being good enough. So
I feel compelled to tell you I met this man, this Puerto Rican man in Chicago. He was 66. If I close my eyes and listen to your story, specifically about your relationship with your dad, and I open them, I could see the 66-year-old Puerto Rican man. And I read a chapter of my book, and this man just started weeping. And he's like, "Can I talk to you?" And I went outside with them, and he said, "I was addicted to heroin for the first like 30 years of my life.
yeah,
And my mother died in my arms. And I was so strung out, I didn't even know she was dead. And my father got sick. And I was shooting up in the bathroom. And he starts weeping. He's like, and I never told him I loved him. And he's like, I just want him to be proud of me.
yeah,
And I'm afraid that he won't love me back. And this is an elder to me. And so I'm holding him. He's holding me. And I was like, will you go outside with me to pour this water out? Because I always invite my father. And what I told him, I guess I'll tell you, is I looked him in the eyes and I said, I don't know your father. But what I do know is you're 66, which meant 36 years of your life, you've been actually helping people out of like some dark places, which means you've been healing people longer than you haven't. So if I was your father, I would just want to tell you that I'm proud of you and that I love you. And as soon as I said that, this wind came. And so whether or not our fathers ever had the language, my spirit wants to tell you that your father loves you and he did read this and he's proud of you because you became sober first and then he became sober. You said, I love you, and then he nodded. You cried when your grandfather's spirit left, and then he cried. So you modeled and gave him permission to be his truest, freest self. And that's remarkable. So I know that fear is deep.
yeah,
And I wish I could just take it from you and bury it on the water. But just knowing you, man, he just genuinely is proud and loves you.
thank you.
And I know I wanted just like how we even met. We're both still wearing.
Yep.
So we met about a month ago.
Yeah.
At the National Compadres Network. And just to kind of set up the scene for folks listening, National Compadres Network's been around for decades, specifically focusing on like Latino men, but through the lens of cultural healing, a lot of Mesoamerican practices and traditions. And I'd never gone. I've always been a fan. Love Jerry, love Hector, love the team, but just whatever God created and wanted to happen. And we were together with 30 other men.
Yeah.
The youngest was 15. The oldest was like mid-70s.
Yeah.
All kinds of different life experiences. It was actually like a good representation of at least my family. You had a good half of the brothers and men were system impacted. The other half and all of us is still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But that's where we met.
Yeah.
Why do you keep going back to those spaces, and what is it about the cultural piece that's helped you get to where you are right now?
So I was first introduced like to those type of teachings through my city college, because I had no no idea about any type of healing. But my old boss, Luis, he worked with Homeboys, Homeboy Industries,
Yeah.
and he was the director of the Santa Barbara City College, the director of equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And he was he was just dope. You know, he was a dope guy. And then he invited me to a sweat, um, and it was in Santa Paula, and we did it with the people from Homeboys. And I was hit a year, like on the, it was like a year, I was a year sober to that date, and yeah, that's when I did my first sweat and first introduced to those type of teachings. And ever since then, I just, I was like, this is the type of stuff that I want to be doing. Just felt so natural to me. I've um, gone to like West. There's no, nothing wrong with like Western doctors. There's a place for everything, but um, yeah, I just didn't. It always felt some type of disconnect. But with that, I felt a lot more at home. Um, I felt people that, I saw people that look like me, that talk like me, went through similar experiences, and they're all healing. And I saw something amazing. I saw a dad there with his son, like how we did at the retreat too. Saw a lot of fathers and sons, and to me, I was like, this is amazing. This is breaking generational traumas. So I fell in love with it since then, and so that was my first introduction to it. And ever since then, I've been trying to, weave it into my spiritual practices, um and yeah, so like I definitely listen to a lot of podcasts that Jerry Tello always does, and um so I am definitely in love, with all those teachings and all that, and I keep going back just because it always welcomes me back with loving arms. Always, like at the retreat, I was skeptical to go. Like I definitely don't want to, like to keep to myself. But I put myself in uncomfortable positions because that's when I grow the most, and so I'm definitely grateful that I went, uh, and yeah, connected with all those people. It took me a minute to get into that, healing mode, because at first I was on guard. I was like, who are all these people? Trying to get away from my thoughts, but once uh, I think it really broke down when you started singing. When when we're in the circle. Yeah, when you sang that song
Oh,
for
wow.
one of our brothers in there,
Yeah.
and that's when I was like, my walk kind of broke down and felt a lot more comfortable. Because that made me cry too. And a couple other people cried too. I saw them. So it was definitely a beautiful moment. I'm glad you were there too. So
Right.
because that broke down a barrier for me. It made me be a lot more open and willing to accept all the medicine in there too. So but yeah, that's what brings me back to those spaces, is that they always love me back with open arms.
Right.
In other spaces I go, and I feel like I have to prove myself to be there. Some certain other places, and those places, those indigenous practice, I always feel welcomed, always feel at home. Always just feel loved.
So like truest essence.
Yeah.
And like the more that we dig in to who we are ancestrally and culturally, the more we come back. You keep saying coming back home to self.
Yeah.
And that allows you the strength to be exactly who you are in all of its beauty. Before we go into the last segment, I wrote something yesterday knowing you were going to come. So I want to read it to you because I've been hiding behind your father, I guess, for this conversation. So I don't want to hide. I want to be Mike. So I said, a few weeks ago, I had the absolute honor of sitting in a sacred circle with Isaac Zamora and 30 other men from the ages of 15 to 70 years old at the National Compadres Network annual retreat. We came together not just as individuals, but as fathers, sons, and brothers willing to do the hard inner work together. We shared our deepest wounds, our unspoken dreams, and intentions to be better men, fathers, and people. By the end of our time together, we were no longer strangers, but chosen brothers. In that space, in that moment, we embodied one of the most sacred truths, that healing only happens in community. The following reel captures me signing copies of my book, Sacred Lessons, for each man who attended the retreat. It was a small gift for all of the blessings that I received from the energy, love, and presence of every man in the circle. A weekend that I will never forget, and that has profoundly, profoundly changed me. Thank you to every man who's choosing to heal. Thank you to every man who's holding space for other men like you do to process our immense grief, pain, and joy. Thank you to the National Compadres Network and all the organizations holding sacred space for men to do the important inner and outer work needed to heal ourselves, our families, and our communities. To every man, and to you, Isaac Zamora, this is Mike De La Rocha saying I love you publicly, because I want to normalize men saying that to other men and not feeling like, dang, I just took my manhood away because I just expressed the most profound gift I could. And especially like us, two men, two straight men, two Chicanos, like I'm doing this when I'm not drunk on purpose. Yeah. And so I love you. This is from me and your father, but I truly do. And I just thank you for all the ashe and blessings you give by just your breath, your mere breath, your presence, and what you do for these young people, for your colleagues, for Santa Barbara, for my hometown of Oxnard. So just thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I love you too.
Yeah. Isaac, this is the last part of the show. We call it the Sacred Five. So I'm going to say 5 quick questions in one word or sentence. You just answer them. And it's our way to those that are listening or watching to like take practical things into their lives. So, all right, ready?
Yeah.
All right, the first one. Name 3 things that make you feel safe, connected, and whole.
Music, exercise, and spending time with my family.
Beautiful. What song, book, or prayer brings you back to yourself?
Song, book, or prayer. Definitely, I mean, songs are, my bad, it's supposed to be one word, but
No, you go ahead.
Redemption Song by Bob Marley. Yeah.
Beautiful. What's one daily ritual or practice that grounds you?
Meditation.
What's one small action that a listener can take this week on their healing journey?
Your breath, taking a deep breath, taking the moment to breathe, that, that breath.
Felt good, huh?
Yeah.
Last one. Share a one-line blessing or quote that inspires you.
The world is yours.
The world is yours. Thank you so much, Isaac. I usually end with 3 nuggets, and there's a lot of nuggets I want to kind of reflect back, but the things I'm taking with me is how sons have the ability to transform their fathers by transforming themselves. By us doing our own inner work, that actually has a ripple effect with those who we may want the most love from, but they may not know how. The second is that there are no monsters in our world. That every being, every person is sacred. And it takes a special person to be able to go into places like you go into and mirror to them their sacredness. But that's just a reminder that everybody is. And so there is no disposable people. And then the last thing is the more that we get to know each other and our cultural traditions and practices, like we talked about, we met through that, through a sweat lodge ceremony, through circle, that the more that we could do that, the more confidence, not confidence, wrong word. I feel the more I and we are able to say, I love you, because we're grounded in culture and in nature. And that's the most connected tissue and truth that there is. And so if you want to say the words, I love you, just say them, even though it's hard.
Yeah.
But your cultural practices will plant the soil and the space and the seed for you to feel like, yeah, I love you because I am love, and therefore you are love. And why should I hide that from anybody?
Yeah.
And so thank you for your blessings and your lessons and your teachings, for being Isaac freaking Zamora. I appreciate you being here and blessing us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate being here too. It's a privilege.
Cool. All right. Till next time.
Thank you.
Sacred Lessons is a production of iHeart's My Cultura podcast network, Sacred Lessons Media, and the Prince Group. For more of your favorite shows, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.